Chelsea Handler, what do you enjoy most about the show, Chelsea?
I think the learning aspect, the travel aspect of it, I like to travel a lot. So getting to go to all these different places, like the first season, we went to Mexico City, Tokyo, we went around the world a little bit. Then we went to India, England, Paris, for this season. I like that aspect a lot. I like getting out of my comfort zone and going and filming stuff I know nothing about or being in places I'm not familiar with. That's pretty much my favorite part, I would say. Yeah.
And where have you been the least comfortable?
The least comfortable? I mean, I find comfort in being uncomfortable. So that's probably not the best question for me to answer. We just came back from Bermuda. We went to the America's Cup. I was very comfortable there because I love to be on the water and I love sailing, and my two favorite things are water and speed. So that worked out nicely for me. I learned how to sail. I fell in the water a lot. I don't know. Where am I least comfortable? I don't know. I don't think I'm uncomfortable. I find comfort in that, you know?
So which country have you visited that you were the most out of your comfort zone?
I would say the most different from what I'm used to would be India.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what moment from the episode in India did you think was the sort of the best or the most interesting thing?
Well, that's tough to say. We haven't really put that episode together yet. Yeah. We just did our episode from England, the UK episode, this last stream. So let me pick a moment from that. I think one of my favorite moments from that, I mean, it's nice to talk to all these, you know, when you go to a place like England, it's a huge melting pot, as is, you know, it's very similar to America in that way. So we did we talked to a lot of refugees and a lot of immigrants from England, and we had kind of a round table, but we also talked to a lot of kids that were like 7 and 8 years old, and their comments on our administration, on Trump, on Theresa May, their prime minister, on all that stuff, and Brexit. And that to me is kind of really funny because they're just basically spouting off what they heard at home, but as if they formed real opinions. And I always kind of get a kick out of hearing kids talk.
What do you think differentiates Chelsea the most from other variety shows on TV? Because in 2017, there are so many on TV.
I don't know. You know, we do a pretty good job of blending the humor with the seriousness. Like, I like to have serious stuff on so that we can be informative and I can learn along with my viewers. But we try and blend the comedy aspect of it with those two things. I mean, you know, there's no one saying that you can't do those things. It's just that usually they don't. It's either a serious show or a funny show. And I feel strongly that you can kind of combine the two. So I've been happy to be able to take advantage of that because Netflix has given me the license to kind of do that. And I really feel like I'm come from a comedy background, so I want everything to be funny. So it's hard for me to go 7 or 8 minutes with the audience not in hysterics or laughing at something. It makes me feel uncomfortable, but I think the messaging overall is more profound and more, I mean, that's a lofty word for what it is, but it's more informative, it's more educational, and it's just kind of more of an edification for everybody, I think.
Doing a variety series on a variety talk show on a Netflix, rather than the sort of network or cable model that we're used to, what is the biggest challenge with that, but also what's the biggest freedom with that?
Well, the freedom is, you know, I mean, the challenge would be that, like, you know, people, you have to constantly remind people where to find you. You know, you're not being advertised on a daily basis. You're not on NBC with all the NBC shows kind of reminding people what's on tonight, who's on tonight. So that's kind of left up to you, social media, you know, the show's social media, your personal social media. But I mean, the benefits of it is that you don't have to adhere to a certain structure, you know, that you can kind of do what you want and be more creative with that in that time space. And for me, I need that kind of like lax, you know, supervision. I need to be able to like kind of do whatever I want and in my own time and in my own time frame and have fun with it, you know, feed the audience, the celebrities that they're interested in seeing, but also feed them with like information that we kind of need to really be informed about right now. I mean, it's a really sensitive time here. So I feel like if you're not using your platform for that reason, or not taking advantage of it at least, then it's a little bit irresponsible.
How has Trump changed sort of the direction of the show and your approach to the show?
Well, I mean, I never believed he would be elected. So I was very surprised, as all of us were, when that happened. You know, everyone here at my show anyway, we all watched it together go down. So it has a change. You know, I feel like you feel a responsibility to your viewers and to yourself as an adult to kind of go after him, to make, you know, hold him accountable, to make sure everybody knows and gets educated how you're allowed to complain about what's going on, how you're allowed to speak up for your rights, and to use your voice. I mean, the galvanization that his election has caused is huge, and that can't be ignored. There hasn't been a movement like this in a long time, and it's a really scary time. But also, you know, during these times, I think you have to be hopeful, and you have to take the piss, and you have to make fun of the fact that this man has been elected to run the United States of America and really can't complete a sentence.
Yeah. With talking about like these important issues and how you address them and things, in your chat with Elizabeth Warren recently, you spoke about how unless you sort of shout and scream and stand up, women's rights or the women's place is going to go backwards. And you said that that was important for women to do, but also important for men to be doing. What's the best way that women, and I'm probably more interested in what's the best way men can speak up and scream and shout in order to not go backwards in that area?
Well, I think it's a matter of, you know, when they're talking about repealing Planned Parenthood or defunding Planned Parenthood or repealing parts of Obamacare that actually help women and help women, you know, when they're pregnant or when they have a pre-existing condition. It's like men have to make those phone calls to Congress too. They have to call their senators and representatives as well. They have to stick up for a women's right as if it's a human right, which it is. You know, men have their rights. So it's actually so much more important for men to be speaking up now, because there are so many men who would be fine with us having those rights being taken away. You know, if you get raped and you get an STD, what they have proposed in that healthcare bill as it stands right now is that that's a pre-existing condition. That's not acceptable. And any man that would be okay with that, who has a daughter or a wife or or mother or sister, I don't understand how any man could be, you know, so for every man that is okay with that, we need, you know, hundreds of other men standing up saying, no, when women succeed, when women prosper, the whole world does. It's good for everyone when women do well. Women don't want to take over from men. You know, they just want to be commensurate with men. And that benefits everybody. And that's been proven over and over again in different societies. So it would just be nice to keep going forward instead of constantly having the same argument that we won 50 years ago or 60 years ago or 70 years ago.
Yeah, I think like the only Millennium Development Goal that sort of affects all the other Millennium Development Goals is equality for women and the greater education and access for women is the only one that sort of has. Maybe the environment was the other one, and addressing climate change. But
but I mean, over years, hundreds and you know, thousands of years, women have been treated like they're not equal, and that's not helpful for anybody. That doesn't help a society prosper. So, you know, when men get away, you know, sexual assault, those kinds of things, like sexual assault has to be taken so seriously. When there's sexual assaults on a campus and somebody says to all the women, don't go out after 10 o'clock, it's like, no, why don't the men stay home after 10 o'clock? They're the ones that are sexually assaulting the women. Women aren't sexually assaulting men. In very rare cases that happens. But when there's a sole sex responsible for rape, sexual assault, crime against women, then we need to really look at that and isolate those people, not inflict punishment on the women that are victims.
When you give interviews on the show, what are you looking for most? What's the thing that you like walk away from and go, oh, that was so good, I was able to do that?
Just something that, you know, you always want as an interviewer, you always want somebody to say something that you haven't heard before, to have a conversation that's more real, that's more grounded. For me, what's so important to me is to have something interesting, you know, not a talking point, not something you've heard, or not having them plug their movie 15 times. I mean, obviously they're there to promote something, but it's of more import to me to actually have a real conversation with somebody. If it's a news person, if it's a politician, I want to learn something that I don't know and figure out a way to get involved and to help my audience also learn how to get involved. So, it's two different kind of subject matters. And then, you also always want to have fun. Information is so much more digestible when it's fun in a fun frame.
What's your favorite? What's the interview that you look back on as your favorite for the show so far?
Will Ferrell was one of my favorite. And on this show, okay, of all time. On this show, I really liked Barbara Boxer the day after the election. I had Barbara Boxer on the day after the election when Hillary lost, and it was a really emotional show. And I also had my best friend Mary McCormick on, and I didn't think I was going to be able to do the show, but she showed up, and Barbara Boxer, and helped me really get through it. And she was incredible. And that was one of the best shows I think ever that I've done.
Yeah. What's something that you have learnt from one of your interviews?
I've learned a lot about policy, like who votes on what, and how long a bill gets taken to, if it passes the House, what happens when it gets to the Senate, how many votes it needs to pass the Senate, how much power the vice president has, how much power the president has. I think we've all learned a lot in this last, in these last few months about how much power the American president has, which is not a lot. He has he can sign a lot of executive orders, but to actually get something through Congress is a whole different story. So, it's a very tricky time, and it's not fun. It's not fun to watch the news, as many hours a day as I do. It's not fun to constantly hear terrible stories about shootings and dissent and terrible violent acts that just go unnoticed. It's a dangerous time. And that's why I think everybody has to be really alert and really on it. And you have to pay attention. You can't just bow out and be like, I want to, go shopping and look at clothes. You can't bow out. It's irresponsible. If you have a kid or a niece or a nephew, anybody that's younger than you, there is an issue that you should be concerned about in this administration.
With doing a show for Netflix, are you more concerned about having to make a talk show with a shelf life?
No, not really. I mean, I don't go after it in that way. We just try to do, we try to talk about, it's like a weekly show. So we talk about the news of the week, but I mean, if you go after it that way, because our travel shows are obviously a little bit more, they have a lot of more shelf life because it could happen at any time. But I think if you go after it in that way, I mean, this whole experiment with Netflix has been to see if it does work on the streaming network. So, I mean, if you go after it with the way of just being something that people can watch, 20 years later, it's kind of defeats the purpose of doing a talk show.
Yeah, no, that's fair. What would you like to do more of on the show that you don't do?
I'm pretty much, we get to do a lot of stuff. So I can't think of anything that I, don't like to do. We get to do a lot of like satirical stuff and funny stuff. And I get to interview a lot of bigwigs, and I'm into that. I'm into all these like political heavyweights that I get to have on the show. That's pretty much that's the most interesting part. But I don't, getting a full hour this season has been great because it gives me a lot of leeway to actually like focus in and hone in on a subject and actually get from one end of it to the other end. It doesn't feel short-lived. It feels like it's a good amount of time to, to explore whatever subject matter we decide to make that episode about.
Yeah. Is it hard to get the sort of political heavyweights or bigwigs off their talking points?
Sometimes it is. Yeah, sometimes it is. If they're a senator or a congressman, there's a lot of messaging that goes, they come back and you try and get them off course and they come right back to their messaging. I think it's the duration of time that you have to talk to these people. The most interesting people I have, like for instance, I have Don Lemon coming on today. I have Selma Hayek and Don Lemon, who's an anchor at CNN. And those guys are really like the Jake Tappers, the Dana Bashes. Those people are really, really riled up. So they're actually, I interviewed Dan Rather yesterday. Those people are kind of off of their messaging points because, before journalism was like, you're not allowed to have an opinion, and not that they're allowed, but they're being realistic about the situation, which is refreshing because it's not like watching the news and somebody's doing something funny and nobody's saying anything. When you watch the news and somebody's doing outrageous things like our president is, you want people to actually have a reaction. Like I loved when Anderson Cooper rolled his eyes at Kellyanne Conway. He should have rolled his eyes 6 months before that.
Yeah, it's funny. It's sort of become very clear that there aren't always two sides to an issue or a point now.
Yeah, there are several. Are you saying there's several more?
Yeah, there's more. It's clearer now that there sometimes there just isn't two sides.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Right. Exactly.
mm. You also often, maybe always, I don't know, have one of your dogs on the show.
Yeah. Yeah. I have Chunk and Tammy. They rotate.
Yeah. Why do you have them on your show? What do you think that says about the show?
They just wandered on, and I just didn't have the energy to tell them to get off. Chunk got a little skittish after this first season. I think it was too many episodes. He did 90 episodes. So Tammy has moved in for season 2 because she's a little bit more chill and she could sit still. He became distracting. He also urinated on camera about 3 times while I was talking to a guest. So it was time to give him the boot. Now he's sitting at home, behaving, hopefully.
Yeah. How many dogs will we have in season 3?
I don't know. I might have to get a new one.
Yeah. Each season, a new dog enters the rotation.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good idea, actually.
What do you think is the who's a guest that you would love to have on the show that you haven't had on yet?
That's a great question that I never have a good answer to. I mean, every single person asks me that question. I don't know. I don't have a great answer. I mean, obviously, I'd like to talk to Barack Obama, but I almost wouldn't because I wouldn't want to disappoint him with my questions. So I like just talking to people that have opinions. To me, that's the most interesting thing is when people have really strong opinions, even if they're not similar to yours. It's nice to have a dissenting are like kind of discourse. I like that. Then you can have a real engaging conversation. And people that have information that you don't know anything about, like I have Neil deGrasse Tyson on recently, and he's incredibly smart. And I didn't even know what language he was speaking. It was like he was talking to me in Turkish. I could have talked to him for 3 hours. That kind of stuff is really fascinating to me.
Who's a guest that you would not want to have on the show?
Any of the housewives from any of those reality shows, or the Bachelor stars, any of that shit.
Yeah, I'd say fair enough. So, finally, Chelsea, look, what else do you? Is there anything else you want to be doing at the moment that you're not able to do with Chelsea, or I
think that it's been a real nice kind of learning curve for me. It's been a lot of fun to experiment with the shows and kind of get into topics that matter to me, that I think are important to kind of give a voice to. And I think, using the viewership that you have and letting and allowing people to see you kind of evolve as a performer is nice for people to see you kind of grow up. It's not like you're a one-trick pony your whole life and you're doing the same thing over and over again. So it's been really like a big pleasure to be here and kind of figure out and navigate what I want to do, what's important to me, and being able to weave in the topics that I find interesting, just because I do. We just went to sailing in Bermuda for the America's Cup, like I said, and that was something they didn't have to, I just decided I would love to be a part of that. We're going to NASA Space Camp to train in a few months. Next month, to the training center in Houston. So it's all those kinds of things. Tomorrow I'm training with Lindsey Vonn at this like extreme workout place. So it's just kind of like a random collection of different things that I don't know enough about, that I just want to kind of introduce to myself and then introduce to my viewers. So it's been fun. I mean, I get to do basically whatever. And get paid. I call it my college education. So it's been 3 years. So, Netflix, it's a Netflix sponsored college education.
What have you learnt the most about yourself from doing the show?
That I like when people are laughing.
That's good. Yeah, that's nice. Do you have a favorite laugh that someone's given on the show?
No, I just like when can I make somebody laugh? Since I was a little girl, it was always important to me to be funny. And so finally, now that I've been able to get a little bit more serious, I notice that I'm like, oh, I get nervous if it goes too long without a laugh. I'm like, oh shit, I better say something funny. But to me, that's so easy. It's like, it's so much harder to like stick to something and not be funny. It's like a nervous tick.
Yeah. Well, Chelsea, all the best of luck for the upcoming Emmy Awards for the Variety Talk races. And all the best for the show as it goes on.
Thank you. Thanks. Nice speaking with you.
Lovely speaking with you too.